how did that change your understanding of the definition of money?
Yeah.
Right, and also, is that what led you to the understanding of collaborative money?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things. One is we realized that if every community had this tool, and communities can be defined as geographical, they can be online and be interest-based, they can be small, they can be big. If every community had this technology and could issue their own currency, we would see, whatever we see in GDP, we'd see more. We'd see more economic collaboration, and we'd see it coming from the bottom up. A lot of this commerce is actually recycled commerce. So, from the sustainability standpoint, we see this as a really positive part of the economy. A lot of it is local services, meaning that people are connecting and people are knowing each other and familiar with each other, even more so than in maybe the standard digital economy. So one thing that was really striking to us was how much abundance can be created. If $25 million worth of abundance, of value, real value to people, can be created in a small 40,000 person pilot over a year, how many trillions of dollars of economic value can be created if we bring this tool to people? Mm-hmm. So that was one striking thing. And that leads kind of to the other striking thing, which is, well, what is money actually? Are hearts money? Our hearts are fake money? Are dollars fake money? What is really real here? And what the journey that we went on, and a lot of it we've talked about around collaborative economics, really leads back to the same place, which is that money is a tool for collaboration. It's not the good itself. It's the tool to get or produce or create the goods. It's a tool. And the other thing is that money, in order to be an effective tool, is actually an agreement. It's a human agreement. People have to agree to use the money in order for it to be a tool to get the things.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that stood out in the book you told me to read, Rethinking Money.
Yeah, by Bernard Leotard.
Yeah, and the way he defines this is money is just an agreement within a community for some medium of exchange.
Yes,
right?
For some collaborative, collective endeavor.
Yes.
Whatever that is, whether it's commerce, whether it's charity, whether it's business creation or art creation. Money is an agreement. It's the agreement that lets us work together. The example I always give people is, if you were alone on Earth, you would not have money, or use money, or need money. You would do whatever you do.
Kind of describe the difference between how our money is set up today, which is fundamentally centralized and also competitive, right, versus decentralized collaborative. Yeah. Right,
and these things tend to go together, right, because when a system is centralized, it becomes the business of the center, whether they intend to or not, to maintain the center, to not allow for other centers. And that is the competitive feature, as opposed to a decentralized system where the entire aim of the system is to not have a center. That just from an architecture perspective means that naturally there will be more centers, because nothing is a center. There will be more nodes in the network, which creates a collaborative paradigm as opposed to a competitive paradigm. So in the case of money, the way that money is architected today is that each government of each sovereign nation is kind of solely responsible and accountable for issuing that nation's money, and making sure that it gets to the people so that the people of that nation can use it to collaborate, right? It's the local, national tool for the people to economically collaborate, whatever that means. And then, of course, between nations, we use exchange rates in order to be able to collaborate beyond our individual nation, right? And today we're really in a global paradigm where almost everyone is collaborating with almost everyone if you kind of zoom out to the financial flows, right? The money is moving all around the world. But these individual currencies are the only ones that people can get access to in order to join the game of life, in order to collaborate, in order to get services from others, in order to give services to others, we all use the same money source. And of course, since it's a fixed supply, even though it changes and different nations have different monetary policies, but there's generally a supply of that money, and we're all competing for it. Whether we are aware of that or not, and we are effectively in a zero-sum game, because if I suddenly have a lot of money, it's come from somewhere in the society. Now it gets more interesting when you think about interest and inflation and how the total amount of money that's available or amount of credit that's available is not fixed, and it's not exactly musical chairs where every time you pay me you're out and I'm up, but it's a little like that. And the fundamental feature here is that to date there has been no way to expand the offering of this tool called money beyond the center. Everything is different now because of blockchain. And that's what Bancor is really focused on, is how is it different, how can we get there, and how can we get there together, and in a healthy way. And so when we talk about collaborative money, one of the things we think a lot about are pilots like the Hearts currency, which we call a community currency. And we talked a little bit about what does it look like when hundreds of millions of communities can issue their own currencies. Well, first of all, we think it looks really beautiful. We think it looks like more recycling of goods and services, more local commerce that often leads to more local environmental protection. It often leads to more employment opportunity and employment diversity for folks in communities who can actually make a living by meeting the needs of those around them, rather than kind of competing for the global or national source of currency. It's more optionality, it's more diversification, and it's certainly more access, especially for folks who are challenged by access to regular money in today's society, which, as we're learning more and more about, is actually many, many people, right? So movements that we see like the 99%, or Occupy Wall Street, or narratives that we hear about wealth distribution, and even though almost everyone is kind of improving in a sense in their life quality and the things that we can do as humans, the medicines that we have, energy and electricity that we have, even though we're kind of all going forward, or a lot going forward, we're not going forward at the same rate. At all. And very few people are going forward very, very quickly, and very many people are going forward much, much less quickly. And so one of the things we think is so important with this decentralized blockchain-based technology is really bringing it to a lot of the folks that today are moving forward less quickly in society, because your relative freedom and your relative dignity, as you called it, is actually in a sense decreasing in a system where the gaps are growing, even though on an absolute level we're all getting closer maybe to having enough food on the table for our children, which we think of as hopefully a basic human right at this stage in our human evolution. We're all going forward, but if you're going forward slower than others, then your relative freedom and dignity is challenged, right? Because you're in servitude to the greater system, or much of your access to basic needs like food and housing and clean water and safety is dependent on your ability to play within the financial system that you inhabit. And so
this reminds me of what Yuval Harari says about people die more of eating too much food. And, right, people start dying of starvation, right? And so this is growing too fast, right? And there's too much abundance here, and then the bottom that's not growing and getting the same kind of which is food supply, right?
Yeah.
Like this human supply.
Yeah, it makes me think of kind of two fundamental things that have been really inspiring for me on my journey. One of them is another book called Small is Beautiful. And it's by a Nobel Prize-winning economist named Schumacher. And he wrote this book in the 70s, but if you read it today, it's like, wow, so on point still, even though things have gone even further than how he was seeing them in that time. But he really talks about, the ethics of local economics and smaller economies. And one of the things that's really interesting to us at Bancor and that we work on predominantly is how can we find a third way, right? Because we're not looking necessarily to go backwards in time. We're not idealizing some previous economic paradigm and saying, oh, it was better then and better before we had Facebook and better before we had too much food and things like that. We're saying the way that we're progressing seems out of alignment in a sense, or seems out of balance in a sense. Can we progress in a more balanced way? So what that means to us is promoting local economies, promoting local currencies, and yet allowing for a global network of currencies and economic collaboration, right? We're not trying to re-isolate communities into not collaborating across each other, across state lines, across national lines. There is first of all, an inevitable march forward in globalization, and also many beautiful things about it. What we're trying to do is not let one eat the other, or let one completely obfuscate the other. And when we remain in this kind of global financial monetary paradigm that we're in today, with centralized currencies, one per nation, and also free market economics and capitalism and some of the other forces that are pulling in the directions that we're going, we are very much crowding out the ability for local economics. We're very much crowding out the ability for the individual to achieve, as you call it, dignity or self-fulfillment in a healthy way, near to their home, near to where they were born. We see this with heavy immigration flows, right? People there's of course a paradigm of immigrating for safety, and also a huge paradigm of immigrating for economic opportunity. There should be economic opportunity wherever you are born, because there are people wherever you are born, and economics is meant to be the collaboration of those people. Mm-hmm. So in some places like Hong Kong, it looks like this, and in other places like a village in Kenya or a small suburban neighborhood in America, it looks like it looks there. And while the mobility of people is kind of new and a welcome advancement in our abilities and our technologies, it should not be forced on people as the only way to survive. And so we really focus on this kind of third way, which is from a technology perspective, a network architecture. So can you have local economies and local currencies which are still part of a global network and still have access to trade with folks all over the world?
So what's the third way? What's the first and second way?
Well, the first way is a total, let's say, global economy. Even it goes to just one currency, right? And there are many folks who think that just using Bitcoin is the way, or maybe just using dollars is the way, or just using something else is the way. The other way is, total. It's kind of like trade wars, right? It's like local economies and economics,
completely separate,
and everyone's doing their own thing, and just let's just go back kind of to where we came from, to a more tribal architecture, more localized architecture. When we talk about the third way, we talk about this kind of fully balanced approach, which is of both and. Global interconnectivity, global communication, global collaboration, but also the ability for that network to maintain within it local nodes. A statement once, which was that a farmer born in rural Africa, in a village in an African country, is often better off financially in terms of being able to provide for their family, migrating to Europe and selling like candy in a nightclub bathroom, then sending money back, then staying home and growing food and raising their family where they were born. And it's just, when you think about it like that, I have to ask myself, is this the economy that we want?
Right.
Is this the purpose of our money? So that people, have to go in great peril to distant places in order to get some of this money and send it back to their children. Is that what we want?